The prophets were numerous. The first of them was Adam.
لوط إسماعيل إسحاق يعقوب يوسف
When Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam reached 30 years old, Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala gave him the revelation and made him a prophet and commanded him to go out to the people and call them to the worship of Allah. And Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he was called Al-Masih. The Christians call him the Messiah. The scholars of Islam said that Isa was called Al-Masih either because he did lots of siyaha, that means traveling, going around, touring. He used to go to different places and different locations, calling people to Islam and making da'wah. Or he was called Al-Masih because of his masih, which is wiping, because he would wipe on the sick people and they would be cured. Alayhi salatu wassalam. Allah revealed a heavenly book to him, which was the Injil. In this Injil, there was the correct belief in Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and that Isa was the slave of Allah and his messenger. And that book also contained religious laws. It had in it the obligation of prayer and fasting. And it had in it the prohibition of eating pig meat and drinking wine and other matters. Prophet Isa, he said, I verify what came before me of the Torah, and I legalize for you some of what was made forbidden for you. It means that Jesus came with a new law abrogating the law of the Torah. So when Prophet Isa got the revelation, there were people from the children of Israel who just switched over. And when the new law came, they stayed as believers and they went following Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam. And among what was in that book, Al-Injil, was the good news of the coming of the prophet of the end of time. وَإِذْ قَالَ عِيسَى بْنُ مَرْيَمَ يَا بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ إِنِّي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ إِلَيْكُمْ. And when Jesus, son of Mary, said, O children of Israel, indeed I am the messenger of Allah to you, مصدقا لما بين يدي من التوراة ومبشرا, verifying what came before me of the Torah, ومبشرا برسول يأتي من بعد اسمه أحمد, and delivering the glad tidings of a messenger to come after me. His name is Ahmad. Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, he stood among the children of Israel and he informed them that he is the last of their prophets and that there shall come after him the illiterate Arabian prophet who is the seal of the prophets and the best of them absolutely. And there was some time when Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, he spent some time with some men who used to dye fabric. They used to color fabric. And he learned from them their skill. And once the owner of the business wanted to travel, and he said to Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, I have a lot of clothing that needs to be dyed with all sorts of colors. I have an order that needs to be filled. I taught you how to do it, so do each one of these in accordance with the instructions for each one. And he left instructions for every cloth or every fabric, how it should be dyed. And then he left. And so Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he heated one of the vessels, a big vessel, and he put in that one container, that one vessel, he put in it many colors at once. And then he put all of the clothing in that container. And he said to it, Kuni bi'ithnillahi ala ma uriduhu mink. Be, by the permission of Allah, as I want you to be. And then, when the owner of the business came back from his travel, and he found all of the clothing in one container, he said, you ruined it. And then our master Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he started pulling out those materials one by one. He would pull out one and it would be red, and he would pull out one and it would be yellow, and he would pull out one and it would be green. Each one came out according to its instructions. So then the owner of the business, when he saw that, he knew that that was something from Allah. And so he believed in Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and he called the people. He made da'wah to the people, and then other people believed in Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. Once he passed by a group of fishermen. Their head was a man named Simeon. So Prophet Isa said to them, what are you doing? They said, we're fishing. He said, let's go fish some people. They said, who are you? He answered them, I am Isa ibn Maryam. I am Jesus, the son of Mary, slave of Allah and his messenger. So they asked him for evidence that he was indeed Jesus. So Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he told him, throw your net into the water. Simeon had already thrown his net into the water, and he hadn't been able to catch anything. So he threw it again. And then Prophet Isa made dua, and he was begging and pleading Allah, and in mere moments that net filled up with so many fish that the net was about to burst. And the men of the ship had to seek the help of the men of another ship. And so they filled up both ships with fish. And then when that happened, they believed in him, alayhi salatu wasalam, and they went with him. So the first who believed in Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam were 12 men. They were called Al-Hawariyun, and we will call them the disciples. And they were sincere followers of Prophet Isa, and they were believers. And they were the supporters of Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So they used to go out and make da'wah with him, and they would make da'wah by his instructions. He used to send people out for da'wah. وَاضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلًا أَصْحَابَ الْقَرْيَةِ إِذْ جَاءَهَا الْمُرْسَلُونَ. Tell them the story about the inhabitants of the town of Antakia, when the messengers of Jesus came to them. إِذْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهِمُ اثْنَيْنِ فَكَذَّبُوهُمَا. When Allah commanded Jesus to dispatch two walis. Their names were Sadiq and Saduq, but the people belied them. Those two, Sadiq and Saduq, they went to the town of Antakia, that's in Turkey. So when these two walis came close to the town, they encountered an old man who was grazing some ghanam, sheep or goats. His name is Habib, and he was a carpenter. So he asked about them, and they said to him, we are the messengers of Jesus, and we call you away from the worship of the awthan, that's the idols, and to the worship of Ar-Rahman. So he said to them, do you have a sign? They said, we cure the sick and those who were born blind and the lepers. And this man Habib, he had a son who was sick. He had been sick for 2 years. So Sadiq and Saduq, they wiped on his son and he got up healthy. So Habib believed. And then the news of these two men spread. And many people were cured by them. Then they were summoned by the king. And the king said to them, do we have a God besides our gods? So they said, yes. Who created you and created your idols is God. He said, let me look into your claim. And then the people chased them and beat them up, and it was said that they imprisoned them. فَعَزَّزْنَا بِثَالِثٍ. So then Allah supported them with a third. Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he dispatched a third one, Simeon. So he entered in among them, but discreetly. And he got to know those who know the king until they were comfortable with him. And then they introduced him to the king. And then the king got comfortable with him. So he said to the king one day, it reached me that you have imprisoned 2 men. Have you heard what it is they have to say? So the king said, no. So he called them. So they were brought. And then Simeon said to them, who sent you? They said, we are sent by Jesus, son of Mary, the messenger of Allah. And Allah is the one who created everything. And he is the one who provided every living thing with its sustenance. He has no partner. So Simeon said to them, describe him. That means say his attributes, but be brief. So they said, he does what he wills, and he judges as he wills. He said to them, do you have a sign? They said, whatever the king wishes. So the king had a young man who was born blind brought forth. And then they made dua. Then Allah made that young man able to see. So Simeon said, do you think that your gods can do something like that? So the king said, it's no secret that our gods don't hear anything, and they don't see, and they don't harm, and they don't benefit. So the king said, if your God is able to revive the dead, then we shall believe. So they brought a young man who had died a week prior. So by the will of Allah Ta'ala, he came back to life. And he said, indeed, I had been committed to 7 valleys of fire because of my dying upon polytheism. And I warn you from what religion you are practicing. Believe. The gates of the sky were opened, and I saw a young man with a beautiful face interceding for those 3. So the king said, who? So that man who had come back to life said, Simeon and those 2. So then the king was surprised. فَقَالُوا إِنَّا إِلَيْكُمْ مُرْسَلُونَ. All of them said, those 3 men, they said, indeed, surely we have been sent to you. And when Simeon saw that what that young man said had affected the king, he advised the king, he talked to him, And that man, that king, he embraced Islam. And some of the people embraced Islam, but not all of them. Those who did not embrace Islam, قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا. They said, you are not but humans like us. وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء. And Ar-Rahman did not reveal anything. إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. You are nothing but liars. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون. They said, our Lord, He knows that surely we are indeed messengers. وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. And there is nothing upon us, nothing is obligatory on us, but clear delivery of the message. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم. They said, surely we take you as a bad omen. You guys, you are bad luck. You come with misfortune. But they only took them as a misfortune because they didn't like their religion. Those people said, لَإِن لَّمْ تَنْتَهُوا لَنَرْجُمَنَّكُمْ وَلَيَمَسَّنَّكُمْ مِنَّا عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. If you don't quit, we will certainly stone you, and there will surely touch you from us a painful torture, for we will burn you alive. قالوا طائركم معكم. So the messengers responded. They said, your superstition has only determined us to be a bad omen because that is what complies with your religion, not because it's true. أَإِن ذُكِّرْتُمْ. Is it that when you are presented with clear knowledge that you take it as a bad omen? بَلْ أَنْتُمْ قَوْمٌ مُسْرِفُونَ. The fact is that you are transgressing people. And then Habib, he was in a cave worshiping Allah. When the carpenter heard the news of what was going on in the town, وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى. And from the extent of the city came a man hurrying. And he saw the messengers. He said to them, are you asking for any money for what you have come with? So when they said, no, we're not asking for any money, Habib said to his people, قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين. He said, oh my people, follow the messengers. اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. Follow those who do not ask you for any salary and they are guided. So they said to him, what? Are you on their religion? So he said, وَمَا لِيَ لَا أَعْبُدُ الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. And why would I not worship the one who created me? And to be judged by him, you shall all return to life. أَأَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِهِ آلِهَةً. Would I take gods other than him? إِن يُرِدْنِي الرَّحْمَنُ بِضُرٍّ لَا تُغْنِ عَنِّي شَفَاعَتُهُمْ شَيْئًا وَلَا يُنقِذُونَ. He said, if Ar-Rahman willed a calamity for me, the intercession of those idols will avail me not. They will not save me in any way. إِنِّي إِذًا لَّفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Indeed, I would be, if I were to do that, in clear misguidance. إِنِّي آمَنْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ فَاسْمَعُونَ. Yes, indeed, I have surely only worshipped your Lord. I believe in Allah, your Lord. So listen to my advice. But they killed him. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And then it was said, while he was in his grave, قِيلَ دُخُلِ الْجَنَّةِ Enter paradise. قَالَ يَا لَيْتَ قَوْمِي يَعْلَمُونَ He said, if only my people knew. بِمَا غَفَرَ لِي رَبِّي وَجَعَلَنِي مِنَ الْمُكْرَمِينَ About my Lord's forgiveness of me and his making me among the honored. وَمَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ مِن بَعْدِهِ مِن جُندٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ And Allah did not send against his people after killing him an army from the sky. Allah did not send down upon them an army from the sky. وَمَا كُنَّا مُنزِلِينَ And that is not the torture that Allah would have inflicted upon them. إِن كَانَتْ إِلَّا صَيْحَةً وَاحِدَةً فَإِذَا هُمْ خَامِدُونَ Indeed, it was but a single scream from the sky, and behold, they were extinguished. The angel Jibreel, alayhi salatu wasalam, he came down and he screamed at them. A single scream, and they all died. وَإِذْ تَخْلُقُ مِنَ الطِّينِ كَهَيْئَةِ الطَّيْرِ بِإِذْنِي And when you formed out of clay a thing like the form of a bird, by my permission, O Jesus. The Jews wanted to challenge Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So they thought of the strangest thing they could think of, which was a bat. The reason they chose the bat is because the bat has many strange features. It flies without feathers, and it laughs, and it's blind except for 2 times of the day, and it gives birth to live babies, and it menstruates. That's the toyer that's mentioned in the ayah. So Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he took that clay and he formed it into the shape of a bat, and he blew into it. فَتَنْفُخُ فِيهَا فَتَكُونُ طَيْرًا بِإِذْنِي And it became a bat by my permission. And he released it and it flew away before their eyes. They saw that, and it flew until it disappeared from the people's eyes, and then it fell down dead. وَتُبْرِئُ الْأَكْمَهَ وَالْأَبْرَصَ بِإِذْنِي And O Jesus, you healed those who were born blind, not those who went blind, those who were born blind, and the lepers, the people who have leprosy, by my permission. وَإِذْ تُخْرِجُ الْمَوْتَى بِإِذْنِي And when you brought forth the dead, by my permission. The first revival of the dead that he did was that one day he passed by a woman sitting at a grave crying. And he said to her, "What's wrong with you?" She said, "My daughter died, and I did not have any other child. And I swore to my Lord that I will not leave this spot of mine until I taste what my daughter has tasted of death, or until Allah brings her back to life so that I can see her with my own eyes." So Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, "If you saw her, you will leave?" She said, "Yes." So Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he prayed 2 rak'ahs. And then he came and he sat at the grave. And he said, "Ya fulana, qumi bi-idhnillahi ar-Rahman, Fakhruji. Oh, Fulana, stand by the will of Allah ar-Rahman and come forth. And then the grave moved. And then he called her a second time. And then the grave split by the will of Allah. And then he called her a third time, and then she finally came out. And she shook the dirt off of her head. And then Isa said to her, alayhi salatu wassalam, what delayed you from coming to me? She said to him, when the first call came, Allah Ta'ala sent an angel to me and he put me back together. And then when the second call came, Allah brought my soul back to me. And then when the third call came, I was afraid that that was the call for Judgment Day. And then my hair went white and my eyebrows went white from fear. And then she approached her mother. And she said, oh, mother, what made you do this? So that I may taste the calamity of death a second time. Oh, my mother, be patient and seek the reward from Allah. I have no need for this dunya. Then she said to Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, ask my Lord to return me back to the afterlife, and that he would make easy on me the calamity of death. So Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, Prophet Isa, he made dua to his Lord, and then Allah Ta'ala made her die, and she went back into her grave, and her grave closed back, flat again, by the will of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And when the Jews heard about that, they became increasingly more agitated. And an example of that is what happened with Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, when he accompanied a man who said to him, Ya Nabi Allah, akunu ma'ak, O Prophet of Allah, I want to go with you. And so they went, and they came to the bank of a river, and they sat down and they ate. They had loaves of bread. They ate two, and one loaf was left. Then Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he got up and he went to the river, and he drank, and when he came back, the loaf was gone. So he said to the man, who took the loaf? The man said, I don't know. And so then Prophet Isa went alayhi salatu wasalam, and that man was with him. And then Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he saw a deer that had two fawns. So he called one of those fawns, and then it came to him, and then he slaughtered it and he cooked it, and he ate from it, and the man who was with him ate from it. And then Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, he said to that deer, Qum bi-ithnillah, get up by the will of Allah. And then it got up. And then he said to the man, I ask you, by the one who made you see this sign, who took the loaf? So the man said, I don't know. And then they went on until they came to some open land. And Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he took some dirt or some soil and he scooped it into a pile. Or maybe it was some sand. And then he said, Kun dhahaban bi-ithnillah, become gold by the will of Allah. And so it became gold. And then Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he divided that into 3 parts. And then he said to the man, 1/3 for me, 1/3 for you, and 1/3 for whoever took the loaf. So the man said, I took the loaf. And then Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, you can have all of it. And he left that man. And then 2 men encountered this man. They wanted to kill him and take his gold. So he said to them, let's split it 3 ways. So they accepted that. And he said to them, someone has to go to town and buy some food for us. So one of them went to go and buy some food. And that one who went to go buy food, he said to himself, why should I split this money with them? I'll poison this food and kill them and take all of the money for myself. So he poisoned the food. And those 2 men, they said to each other, why should we share the money with him? When he comes back, let's just kill him and we'll split the money in half. So when he came back, they killed him. And then they ate the food and they died of poisoning. And at one time, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he passed by them and there they were. 3 dead men and a pile of gold. And he said to his companions, هَذِهِ الدُّنْيَا فَاحْذَرُوهَا. He said to them, that is the reality of the dunya, so beware. And it was reported that a king among the Israelite kings had died, and he was carried to his grave on maybe in a coffin or upon something flat that he's laying on, and they're carrying him. So Isa came alayhi salatu wassalam and brought him back to life by the will of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And when the people saw that, they were dumbfounded. When the Jews heard about that, they said he wasn't really dead. He must have been asleep. Maybe he just had heart failure or something. They said, if he can really bring the dead back to life, then let him bring back Sam, the son of Noah. So Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, show me his grave. So they took him to his grave. And then Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he hit the grave with his staff. And then Sam, the son of Noah, came forth from his grave. And he pointed at Isa and he said, he is a prophet. Believe in him. And then he went back dead again. And it was said something else about Sam, the son of Noah alayhi salatu wasalam. It was narrated that one day Prophet Isa was telling his companions about Nuh and the flood and the ark. So his disciples said, why don't you resurrect for us someone who will testify to that for us? So Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he went to a mound like a small hill, and he said, this is the grave of Sam ibn Nuh. And then he made dua to Allah, and Allah Ta'ala made him come back to life. And he came out of his grave and he said, is it judgment day? Isa alayhi salatu wasalam said, no. However, I asked Allah to revive you. And then they asked him about the ark, and they asked him whatever they asked him, and he answered them. And then Allah Ta'ala made him fall back dead again. Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he had a friend named Azar. When this man Azar got sick, his sister sent word to Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam. The Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, he went to go visit his friend, and the distance between them was 3 days. So by the time he got there, he found that his friend had passed away. So he went to his grave and he made dua to Allah, and then he said, Qum bi ithnillah, stand by the permission of Allah. And then Azar, he got up by the permission of Allah, and he lived extended life, not like those others that Prophet Isa made them come back to life by the will of Allah, and then they died back again. This one came back to life, and he lived for some time, and he even had some children. And among those that Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam brought to life was the son of an old lady. He was being carried to his grave. Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he made dua for him to get up by the will of Allah. And so then that boy, he got up by the will of Allah Ta'ala, and then he climbed down from the shoulders of the men who were carrying him. He climbed down them, and then he put his clothing on, and he took that thing that they were carrying him on, and he went back home. And you know, Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he's not the only prophet who revived the dead. He's not the only prophet who revived the dead. Among them was Prophet Hizqeel. After he had revived the dead by the permission of Allah, they sought from him another sign. So they said to him, tell us about what we eat in our houses, and tell us what we store away for tomorrow. And so he told them, he said, Fulan, you ate this and that, and you ate this and that, and you store in your house this and that. And few people believed in Prophet Isa at first, alayhi salatu wassalam, but then his da'wah started to spread, and his followers started to increase, and his supporters were getting stronger. He had commanded the disciples, al-Hawariyun, to fast for 30 days. And they were with him in the open land. And whenever Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam would go out, there would follow him thousands of people. Some of them would be his companions, and some of them are asking for his dua, and some of them are asking for him to cure them. And some of them are tagging along just to make trouble. His disciples asked him, إِذْ قَالَ الْحَوَارِيُّونَ يَا عِيسَى ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ هَلْ يَسْتَطِيعُ رَبُّكَ أَن يُنَزِّلَ عَلَيْنَا مَائِدَةً مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. When the disciples said, "Oh Jesus, son of Mary, will your Lord approve of sending down to us a table spread from the sky?" قَالَ اتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. He said, fear Allah. He was afraid for them that they asked for that, because he was afraid that their asking for a sign from Allah would be a reason for them to be destroyed later. So they asked him to ask Allah to make a table spread come down from the sky, so that their hearts would be tranquil and that they would be at peace, knowing that Allah Ta'ala accepted their fast. And so that would be an Eid for them, and then they would eat that food on their Eid. And they asked for that to be enough for them, for everyone, for the first person who eats from it down to the last, and for the rich and the poor. And Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he advised them, he preached to them, and he was afraid that they would not appreciate the endowment of Allah as they should. And they had already seen plenty of miracles, so why are they requesting more? But their answer was that they wanted to eat from it to get the blessings. And they insisted. And so he went to where he used to pray. And he was wearing a cloak of hair, a cloak made of hair. And he lowered his head and he cried out of the fear of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and he took to begging Allah and beseeching Allah and making dua until Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala answered his dua. And then a table spread came down from the sky, a cloud above it and a cloud below it, and around it were the angels. And that spread was descending little by little. And every time it drew closer, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he asked his Lord to make it a mercy and not to make it a punishment. And that he would make it safe and blessed. And it kept coming down closer and closer until finally it settled right in front of Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and it was covered. And so he uncovered it, saying, Bismillahi khayril raziqeen. In the name of Allah, the best of providers. And behold, there was there 7 fish, big fish, 7 loaves, vinegar, salt, pomegranate, honey, fruits. And they found it with a very, very delicious smell. They never encountered something like that. And the news of that reached the Jews, so they came, and they were very disappointed to see that. So Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he commanded his disciples to eat. They said, we won't eat until you eat. He said, who should eat from it is who requested it. And they refused. So when they refused to start, the sick people, the blind people, the crippled people, the poor people, he commanded them to come, and there were about 1,300 of them. He told them to eat, and they obeyed him. And so they ate from it, and the blessings appeared from this great miracle, because every single one of them was cured. And whoever was poor became rich. And then the people who refused to eat when they were told to, they regretted that. When they saw the benefit that those who ate got, they regretted that they were not among those who ate. And then when the people crowded around this table spread, Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he started giving them turns until every single last person ate. It was said that every day 7,000 people ate from it. And then after 40 days, Allah Ta'ala commanded Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, Ya Isa ja'al ma'idati hadhihi lil fuqara'i duna al-aghniya. Oh Jesus, make this table spread of mine for the poor, not the rich. So Isa complied with the command. When Prophet Isa specified that table spread for the poor people, that was difficult on the rich people. And he ordered them to not cheat, and to not sneak, and to not take any of it and keep it to take it back. But of course, whoever cheated, cheated. Some of them took some to store it for the next day until the table spread was raised. And then that table spread was raised up to the sky, and that was difficult for many of the people. They were disappointed. So when the spread was raised up, and so many people were disappointed that now the spread is gone, the table spread, the hypocrites among the people, that means the people who used to pretend to be Muslims, but really they were kuffar, they went amongst the people spreading doubts about Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam. And so Allah revealed to Isa that he will torture those who blasphemed. So when those who committed kufr woke up the next day, they found themselves transformed into ugly pigs, deformed. There were 33 of them. And they started eating from the garbage after they had been eating nice, delicious food and sleeping on soft beds. And when the people saw that, then they went to Isa crying. And then those pigs came to Isa alayhi salatu wassalam with their heads low. And they were crying and their tears were flowing. And Isa knew them alayhi salatu wassalam. And he started saying to them, aren't you so-and-so? And then he would verify with his head without being able to speak. And they stayed like that for several days until Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, he made dua and Allah made those people who turned into pigs die. And nobody even knew what happened to them. Did the earth swallow them or what? It's like they disappeared. No one knows what happened to them. And the people, they spoke about this great miracle of Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, and a lot of people believed in him. And the believers, they increased in certainty. And so the Jews were very envious of him and very hateful. And they felt as if the carpet is being pulled from under them. And that they have to do something about this one, Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus, the son of Mary. And so they conspired to kill Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam and rid themselves of him. And they did that with some of the kings of their time. They mobilized to go and get Prophet Isa and then go kill him. Before the Jews came in, Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he was with his disciples in a house. And he said to them, indeed, some of you will disbelieve in me after he had believed. And then he said to them, which of you will be given my likeness and then killed in my place and then be my companion in paradise? So a young man stood up, the youngest one of them. He said, I. The Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam said, sit. And then he repeated himself, which of you shall be given my likeness and killed in my place and be my partner in paradise? And so the same young man stood up. He said, I. The Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he told him to sit, and he asked this question a third time. And the same young man stood up. He said, I. And then he said to him, you are the one. And so Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala gave that man the likeness of Isa alayhi salatu wassalam. And what we have learned is that Allah did not make that man look 100% like Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam. He gave that man a likeness to Isa, but not like he's identical to him alayhi salatu wassalam. And then Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, right before their eyes, he was raised and taken through a window at the highest part of the wall, like a window right at the ceiling. Alayhi salatu wasalam, and they saw him go out with their own eyes. And Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he was raised when he was 33 years old. And Allah Ta'ala saved him from the plot of the Jews. Then the Jews, they came into the house and they took that young man and they killed him and they crucified him, believing that he was Isa alayhi salatu wassalam. And they were mistaken about that. So they killed that man and then they went spreading the news, we killed Jesus, Jesus has been killed. And the followers of Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, many of them, they believed that. And they took a lot of what the Jews were claiming about Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, and they were mistaken too. So those are two groups who were mistaken. The Jews who killed a man thinking it was Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, and many people who heard the news that it was said that Jesus was killed and they believed it. But Allah Ta'ala tells us, وَقَوْلِهِمْ إِنَّا قَتَلْنَا الْمَسِيحَ عِيسَى بْنَ مَرْيَمَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. And they are damned for their saying, indeed we have killed Al-Masih, Jesus the son of Mary, the messenger of Allah. When they said the messenger of Allah, they were making fun of him. وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ. And they did not kill him, and they did not crucify him. وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ. Rather, someone was given his likeness, so they were mistaken about whom they killed. وَإِنَّ الَّذِينَ اخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ لَفِي شَكٍّ مِّنْهُ. And indeed, those who differ about him are certainly doubtful about the issue. مَا لَهُمْ بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ إِلَّا اتِّبَاعَ الظَّنِّ. They don't have any definitive knowledge about him being killed. They're just following conjecture. وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ يَقِينًا. And they did not kill him with certainty, meaning they themselves, the people who participated in that, they were not sure that the one that they put on that pole was Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, because he didn't seem to be, to some of them, exactly the one. So they differed about that, and some of them, they said it's him, and some of them said it's not him. And there's even some reports, according to some reports, it was one of them that was given the likeness of Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, and they took their own man and killed him. They took their own man and killed him, but only his face looked like the face of Isa, but his body was still his own body, according to another report. So they put the man on the pole and they looked and they said, if that's Isa, where's our companion? And if that's our companion, then where's Isa? They were not sure about it. بَلْ رَفَعَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ. Rather, Allah Ta'ala raised him up to the sky. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَزِيزًا حَكِيمًا. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in eternity, He is undefeated and wise.